Assalamualaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, if you remember, in the previous lecture we have talked about the story The Man Who Planted Trees. This is our third lecture on the same story. Again, before we begin reading the text, I would like to go back to the theme of the unit again and give you a short overview of that. Keep in mind that we are discussing Unit 4 and in Unit 4 the theme of the whole unit is hope, courage and determination. I told you this theme, these three words, it will be explored, these three phenomena, they will be explored through different stories and poems in the unit. We are reading basically the second story. This is the story about a man who was planting tree in a wilderness. And the interesting point and the interesting part about this story is the shepherd who was working in those areas, in this wilderness, in this barren land, that he was not the owner of that land. First. Second, he even did not know that the land belongs to whom. He was unaware of the owner of the land. Despite all these things, he was still living there and he was planting trees and he was invisible. Nobody noticed. And he was doing it just for the purpose that this land is in dire need of plants and trees. So with utmost commitment and hope, courage and determination, he was capable of doing a spectacular job which will be explored at the end of the lesson. So if you remember, I will give you a quick summary of the previous lectures that we have covered. That there's a man, the writer of the story, Gengiano, he visited the mountain range of Alps, which is in France, in Europe specifically. He visited a place which was never been explored by most of the tourists before him. And he went out of water, he was in search of water, and he suddenly met a shepherd. He offered him water and also he offered his cottage or his livings or his accommodation with him. The man, the writer, he said, I stayed with him for the night because it was not possible for me to reach back to the city again. And after spending a night with him, he was a very unique person living in such a wilderness, a shepherd who was cleanly shaven, who was having very good clothes. He was, he was a very active, smart person. And he was clean, the house was clean, everything was organized, well organized. So he wanted to explore this person more. So in order to do that, he asked the shepherd that, can I stay for a day more? And of course the shepherd agreed. And the next day, he noticed that shepherd, he was taking acorns, the seed of oak trees, and he used to select the best of them and then he was planting them in those areas. So that is the whole story for now that we have discussed in the previous lectures. I'm going to read from page 140 or 148 onwards. Please open your books on page 148. This is the second paragraph. Besides, he was now studying the reproduction of beech trees and had a nursery of seedling grown from beech nuts near his cottage. If you remember, in the previous lecture, we left at the point that he was living alone, he was planting so many trees and he was doing it for 3 years. And when the writer discussed this thing with the shepherd, he said that within 30 years, if I'm still alive for 30 years, I will produce a huge amount of jungle or forest in this area. So beside just planting oak trees, the shepherd was also doing his own research and he was trying to come up with more different species of trees. It was not just the oak trees he was planting, at the same time he was looking for other species or other types of trees that can be grown in that area. So for that purpose, he was also growing different seedlings. So what a seedling is, this is what a seedling looks like. It is basically the small plant that we use to even these type of small plants are available at the bazaars or markets also, and you can easily take them, but they are of course grown out of seeds. So these small young plants are called seedlings. Grown from beech nuts near his cottage. Beech nuts, this is what a beech nut looks like. This is the picture of beech nut. From these beech nuts, basically these seedlings were grown, and he was actually growing them close and near to his cottage, and that there was a reason behind that, right? So look at this again. This is what beech nuts they look like. Look at the next sentence. The seedlings which he had protected from his sheep with a wire fence were very beautiful. These seedlings were of course quite attractive. He was also considering birches for the valley, where he told me there was a certain amount of moisture a few yards below the surface of the soil. As I mentioned earlier, he was not only planting oak trees, he was also looking at planting other types of trees. So he was also struggling to plant birches. Birches is basically a very unique, I would say a very unique or novel type of a tree, which is a bit difficult to be grown in different areas. Like it is not possible that you can grow a birch trees everywhere. So he was also looking on that. This is what a birch tree looked like. This is the picture of that. They are long, tall trees, and they are not easy to be grown in every area. They are basically grown in the beach areas, close to the rivers or the sea or the ocean. And there's another picture. These are basically birch trees in winter, right? They are filled with the snow. And there is a very famous poem by Robert Frost, Birches. He wrote the poem, and the title of the poem is Birches, which is very much famous, and it is one of the most celebrated poems. These are basically birch trees in winters. So he was also looking to grow these birches in that area. Look at the next paragraph. The next day we departed. So the writer is telling us after he visited him for 2 days, he departed, he left that place. The following year came the World War of 1940. The First World War that broke out in 1914, in which I was involved for the next 5 years. We know that World War First lasted for almost 5 years, and the writer says I was involved in that. An infantryman hardly time for reflecting upon trees. Now, if you are a soldier or an army man, you don't have time to think about, oh, I have visited a place and where I have seen so many trees, what about those trees? You just forget these type of small things then. It seems small to you because you are more into fighting, you are involved in a world war. So he said, I was not thinking about those trees, etc. To tell the truth, the thing itself had made no impression upon me. I had considered as a hobby a stamp collection and forgotten it. And the writer is commenting that I just forgot about this. This very phenomena, growing trees in a wilderness, this phenomena did not leave any strong impression on me. I just forgot about it. The war was over. After 5 years, when the war was over, I found myself possessed of a tiny demobilization bonus and a huge desire to breathe fresh air for a while. Again, he spent almost 5 years fighting, so he wanted to take a fresh air and to get relaxed. He wanted to go to the same place where he visited 5 years earlier. It was with no other objective that I again took the road to the barren lands, and he visited the same place after 5 years. The countryside had not changed. Those areas which were close to the city area, they were the same, they were not being changed. However, but beyond the deserted village, I glimpsed in the distance a sort of greyish mist that covered the mountain tops like a carpet. But the writer commented that when I reached to that point, remember in the very start of the story, he was telling us, there are ruins, there are deserted villages. So he said, beyond those deserted villages in the hilly areas, I could see a greyish mist and it is as if these mountains were covered with a carpet. But with what color of carpet? Grayish mist. And this grayish mist is basically, that is the oak tree that has been grown into full-fledged trees, and they got this specific type of flowers on them. So due to those flowers, from a very long distance, it can be seen that as if they have been covered, these mountains are covered with a carpet. Since the day before, I had begun to think again of the shepherd, tree planter, 10,000 oaks. I reflected, really take up quite a bit of space. And then he said, when I reached there, I started again thinking about that shepherd, that he was planting trees, and at that time he planted almost 10,000 oaks. So then the writer says, I was thinking, okay, 10,000 oak trees are too much. It has covered a lot of space. Look at the next paragraph, please. I had seen too many men die during those 5 years, not to imagine easily that Elliot Beaufair was dead, especially since at 21 regards men of 50 as old men with nothing left to do but die. And since he was a soldier, the writer, he said that I was working in the army and I fought the First World War, and I have seen so many people dying. So this very concept of dying was very much common and familiar to me. And I was also of the view that this man, the shepherd, would also be dead, because it has been like 5 to 6 years now, so he would have also died. And beside all this, young people, younger generation, mostly they used to think about old people, that their main objective now, which is left in their life, is to die. You know, that is the end of their life. So definitely younger people are mostly thinking about old people in a way that they are going to die someday. Look at the next paragraph, the second last paragraph on page 148. He was not dead. As a matter of fact, he was extremely spry. He reached there, the writer, and he said that the shepherd was not dead. He was alive, and he was more energetic and enthusiastic when I see him. He had changed jobs. So what the shepherd did, he basically changed the job. Initially, he was a shepherd. He was having a large number of sheep and lambs, but now he has changed his jobs. Now he had only 4 sheep, but instead 100 beehives. Now he is having beehives, no more sheep, only 4 sheep. What a beehive is, these are the pictures. This is the natural beehive that we used to have in our villages, etc. This is another picture of those artificially, kept beehives. So these are both, we call them beehives. He had got rid of the sheep because they threatened his young trees. And the shepherd, why did he switch the job? He switched the job because the plant that he was growing, basically sheep were going to eat them. That was a threat to his forest. That is why he changed the job. Look at the commitment. It means in life, when you see a small problem or any problem that stops you, or any limitation or any temptation which stops you from reaching to your goal, just change that. Don't change your goal for your small things, for your small achievements. Don't change your longer achievements, high achievements, for your short achievements or winnings or benefits. Right? That is the message that the writer is giving us here. So he was having the vision of a huge forest to be grown in these areas. So he even switched his job for that purpose. And the job was to become a person who will keep beehives instead of being a shepherd. He had got rid of the sheep because they threatened his young trees. For he told me, as I saw for myself, the war had disturbed him not at all. He had imperturbably continued to plant. And he said that I was not being disturbed by the war at all, because he was working in those hilly areas. He was never disturbed by the war at all. So he was working silently on his mission. Nothing else disturbed him. In the same way, if you have a vision in your mind, if you have a mission in your mind and you want to achieve that goal, nothing else Nothing else should distract you. It should not disturb you. If it is going to disturb you, it means you are not focused on your vision or mission. Look at the last paragraph, 148. The oak of 1910 were then 10 years old and taller than either of us. It was an impressive spectacle. Those oaks which were being planted by the shepherd in 1910, they were now more taller than the writer and the shepherd themselves. I was literally speechless, and as he did not talk, we spent the whole day walking in silence through his forest. I already mentioned that the shepherd was not a very talkative person. He was a silent person. So the writer is also commenting on the same thing, that since he was not a very talkative person, so I met him. He has done a great job, but he was not talking about it. See, I have done this and that. No, he did not mention even those achievements. And we were silently walking through his forest. In 3 sections, it measured 11 kilometers in length and 3 kilometers at its greatest width. When you remember that all this had sprung from the hands and the soul of this one man without technical resources, you understand that men could be as effectual as God in other realms than that of destruction. He is basically commenting on the width and length of the forest, that it is almost 11 kilometers in length and almost 3 kilometers wide. See, just imagine such a huge area. It was being transformed by only one man, the shepherd. And in the last line, he is commenting on the human nature, that humans are mostly destructive by nature. Mostly they think that we can destruct things, while constructive spirit is mostly sleeping, I would call it, or it is mostly being ignored. So he said, even if you want to do something, you can do extraordinary things. Don't think that I'm alone and I have the capability of just, I don't have resources or technical supports, and these are all excuses. If you really want to do something, you can of course do it alone, even as this huge, tremendous achievement was made by the shepherd alone. We are on page 149 now. I am going to read the first paragraph. He had pursued his plan, and birch trees as high as my shoulders, spreading out as far as the eye could reach, confirmed it. I told you he was planting oak trees in abundance, but at the same time he was also working on birch trees. So those birch trees were also now to the height of the shoulder of the writer. So they were also quite grown trees now, the birches. He showed me handsome clumps of birch planted 5 years before, that is in 1915, when I had been fighting at Worden. And before he left, he was shown by the shepherd that, see, these are my birch trees, and after 4 to 5 years there will be large trees, and that happened basically. And see, this is a very, there's a contrast. Contrast is, in 1915, when the writer was busy fighting, the shepherd was busy growing plants. He was doing a constructive thing, while the writer, he was busy killing people. He was destroying everything, while the shepherd, he was constructing. He was saving the world, right? Werden is the name of the place in France. It is one of the most famous places or battlefields in World War I. He had set them out in all the valleys where he had guessed, and rightly, that there was moisture almost at the surface of the ground. They were as delicate as young girls and very well established. So these places, the birch trees, I told you, they are not easy to be grown in every area. So he took a great care of them, and he chose specific places for them, that these places has a certain amount of moisturizer in them. So he planted those trees in those specific areas. And at the end, after 5 years, they were very much grown trees, and they were delicate, like young girls. Look at the next paragraph on page 149. Creation seemed to come about in a sort of chain reaction. Now this, if you have studied other lessons in first year book also, there is one more over environment. This phenomena has also been described in that. There is a chain, a food chain, and there's also an environmental change. So if you disturb one thing in an environment, it has effects on so many other things. For example, if you cut a tree, so it does not mean that you just cut a tree so we will have carbon emission. Of course we will have more carbon emission, we will have more concentration of carbon in our environment, but at the same time it will affect so many other things, not just one. So this change will happen in a chain, and it will affect almost every aspect of your life. So this change, but that was a positive change. He was growing trees, so it has a very good positive impact, and it was a chain. He did not worry about it. Since it is a chain reaction, so if you do one positive step, the other things will keep on repeating itself in a positive manner. That is why the shepherd was not worried about it. He has determinedly pursuing his task in all its simplicity, but as we went backward to the village, I saw water flowing in brooks that have been dry since the memory of man. And he said, when I was going back to that village side, I saw that there were brooks, there were small streams that were flowing in this area, which was absent before his first visit in 1910. Remember, 5 years earlier, there were no stream or brooks of that manner in that area, but now there is a brook. What a brook is? This is what a brook looks like. It's a small stream. See, this is not a river or an ocean. This is a small stream which we call brook, basically, right? This was the most impressive result of chain reaction that I had seen. And as I mentioned, he was growing trees, remember. He was not constructing streams, but that happened as a chain reaction. You have grown trees here, there will come rainfalls, and of course you will have streams here. So this is basically a chain reaction. The wind too scattered seeds, and also the wind was blowing in that area I mentioned earlier, but now it was soothing, and it used to distribute the seeds in different areas, different parts. As the water reappeared, so there reappeared willows. And as soon as, water, water is the essential part of life, right? So when water came, it brought so many other things, which also brought willow. What is willow? It's a type of tree. See, this is what a willow tree looks like. Look at the branches. This is as if it is crying, or as if a girl or a person with long hair sit and spread his or her hair. So this is what a willow tree looks like. There's another picture also. This is a willow tree. So these willow trees they have also grown in that area. Rushes, meadows. What a meadow is? This is how a meadow look like. Basically, meadow means when you have greenery everywhere and the hay field which is ready to be cut. This is what we call a meadow. So see, these are the flower and plants. They are ready. They can be trimmed from this area, and this is how a meadow look like. Gardens. There were gardens in those areas. Flowers everywhere, greenery, and a certain purpose in being alive. And all these things were contributing to the very concept of being alive in such a place. But the transformation took place so gradually that it became part of the pattern without causing any astonishment. But these changes, all these changes were so slow and gradual and stepwise that it did not shock anyone. Nobody noticed, oh, this thing was absent yesterday, but it is here now. No, it did not happen in that manner. It happened slowly and gradually. That is why nobody noticed this huge change. Hunters climbing into the wilderness in pursuit of hare or wild boar. Look at these two pictures. This is a rabbit, remember. So, rabbit is a little bit smaller in size than hare. This is hare. Look at its size. It has a little bit elongated body. Look at the size of its ears. So, it has a little long ears than the rabbit. And one thing more, which is also, it will help you to differentiate between a hare and a rabbit. Then look at these, the fur. The fur of the rabbit is a bit more smooth than the hare. Hare's fur is a bit, coarse. It is not that smooth like the rabbit. So when you say hare, So here is something of that sort of animal, while rabbit is of this sort. So there were hares in that area and wild boar. This is what a wild boar is. You know, the pigs, but these pigs are basically wild pigs. They are not pets or livestock at homes. They are basically wild boars. He had of course noticed the sudden growth of little trees, but had attributed it to some natural caprice of the earth. These things, they also noticed the changes, but it wasn't. It was not being, attributed to the shepherd. Nobody knew that this whole change is being brought by one man just by planting so many trees. But people thought, or even these animals, they thought that this change is natural. Because we are having rainfalls and all these things. That is why we have forest, we have greenery, we have meadows, and all these different types of trees. So this achievement was not attributed to Elizabeth Beaufort. That is why no one meddled with Elizabeth Beaufort's work. And since he was invisible, nobody attributed this huge achievement to this shepherd. That is why he was not being disturbed. Remember, if you do anything, people will disturb you. If it is positive or negative, they will always disturb you. So he was doing a very positive thing, but since he was not noticeable that much, he was not being disturbed a lot. If he had been detected, he would have had opposition. See, the writer is commenting on the same phenomena, that if he was detected, that if people came to know about him, that okay, this person is planting trees and he's having this mission, he would have had opposition from so many different people. So he had no opposition because he was working silently. He was undetectable. Who in the villages or in the administration could have dreamed of such perseverance in a magnificent generosity? And again, nobody thought that a person who has nothing to do with these hills, with these areas, he will come and he will start doing all these things just because he wanted to grow trees. He wanted to transform the whole area. I will work for my own benefit. Nobody works for nobody else, right? They work for themselves first. So that is why nobody noticed him, not the administration or the common people of that area. I thought that I would be able to finish it off, but I don't think so. The lecture is already prolonged now. So I will stop here. Inshallah, we will continue from the same point and I will finish off this lesson by tomorrow. Thank you very much.